Well, good morning, Velocity. There's your inspiration for the morning. I don't even need to do a message now. There you have it. No, but good morning. It is so good to be here with you guys today. I know it's been a while since I've been here, so maybe I should actually introduce myself. My name is Austin, and I now live in Chicago. I'm a theology major out at Moody Bible Institute in the greatest city in the U.S. for like 2 weeks out of the year when the sun comes out. But it is so good to be here. I want to thank Christy and Grant for inviting me to be here. It was just a few years ago that I was sitting in those very seats, so it's always an honor, a privilege, a joy to jump on this side of it. And I want to say, just right off the bat, that is my goal today. Not that you would walk away and say, what a great message. Not that you'd walk away and say, wow, that rhyme really hit me. It was great. But that you would walk away having gotten a glimpse of the goodness of God, and that the message could fade into the background as you simply experience the love of God. I know it's a lofty goal, but that is my goal for us here this morning. And so since we're shooting high, we better pray to start off. And we're all in this together, so you may as well join in with this prayer. Dear God, I thank you so much for bringing us out here today. I thank you that you brought each and every one of these students here for a specific purpose, that you have a plan for them being here. You have things that you want to say to them. I pray that we would just have ears to hear, and that we would just be receptive to this message, and that we would all just perhaps get a small glimpse of your unending, ceaseless love for us. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Well, guys, I don't know how it happened, but somehow we have made it to the final week of 2019, and next year is 2020. That simply blows my mind. I remember when we were getting ready to go into 2010 and sitting in Walmart with my childhood best friend being very, very distressed because we didn't know what was going to be next. All we knew was that it had been Madden 06, Madden 07, Madden 08, Madden 09. There's still a 0 before the 10. Would it be Madden 010 or would it just be We weren't sure, and we were greatly concerned, but soon enough we found out. And all was well in the world, and It was Madden 10. It was Madden 10. Yes, I don't want to leave you in suspense this entire time. I know that would give me anxiety, not knowing. So now you know. And yes, now we have all the way here to 2020. And as I look back on 2019, I am super grateful. There was a lot of fun stuff I got to do in 2019. I got to go to Australia and New Zealand and Ireland and Canada and kind of all over. And I moved to Chicago. For me, and probably likely for many of you, 2019 had its celebrations, and it also had its funerals, and I know we might have all experienced that in different proportions. And I know we just met, but I believe something about each and every one of you. I believe that no matter what your 2019 was like, whether it was your best year on record, or whether you can't wait for it to just be over, I believe each and every one of us desires that 2020 would be better than 2019. It's a simple human desire for progress. It's why we're not still sitting in caves bashing rocks together hoping fire happens. We move on. We hope for things to get better. And I believe that each of us actually has the audacity to desire that not only would 2020 be better than 2019, but that it would in fact be our best year yet. And I saw an advertisement the other day in Chicago that I think well captures the spirit that's in the air, specifically at this time of year, as we're setting New Year's resolutions, as we're looking back on 2019 and looking forward to what 2020 might have. And I was walking down Michigan Avenue, which, if you know Chicago, is an area that I generally avoid like the plague because it's filled with tourists and shopping and too many people. But unlike a good local, I was down in Michigan Avenue because my favorite tourist was in town, my girlfriend was there, so to the touristy things we went. And as we were walking down, I saw this taxi with an advertisement above it. And it was an advertisement for United and Star Wars. I've never seen Star Wars, don't yell at me. I don't really know what they were getting at, but the advertisement itself, I think, well captures it. And it said simply this: be your own hero. Be your own hero. And I think there's something inside each of us, but especially at this time of year, that desires to be our own hero. There's this anticipation. We make New Year's resolutions, and we have this desire that as we turn the page, that maybe this could be our year, that maybe this could be the year we step into all that we were created to do and be. Maybe this could be the year that we do that thing that we've been wanting to, that we become a little more like that thing that we want to become. And I think that same spirit, that same air of anticipation that we have as we turn the page into this new year, and in fact into a new decade, was present in the passage that I want to look at today, but even more so because these people were stepping literally into their God-given destiny, their purpose. There would have been a feeling in the air akin to stepping on the field of the championship game, stepping out onto opening night of the play, whatever it is for you that just gets your adrenaline going. I think they would have had that and had it in abundance as they stepped into this moment. Because today we're in the book of Joshua, but a lot has happened by the time we get to Joshua in the story of the Bible. So I'm going to give you a really quick recap if I can, so it's not like you're just jumping into the middle of a movie. So basically, God creates man. He puts them in this garden. Things are great. He creates them to have union with God and community with God, experiencing his love, ruling and reigning over creation. Everything was going to be great. Until we messed it up, we rebel against God. We say, you know what, God, we want to define good and evil on our own terms. We want to say how we want to do things. We want to kind of be our own gods. Thanks, God, for your advice, but we've got it from here. And thus begins the story of humanity, generally messing things up pretty royally. So we make a real mess out of things, but then God enters into our mess, and he calls out one man named Abraham. And he tells Abraham that he is going to make him a promise. And that promise consisted of three things. He told him that he would make him into a great people in a given place for a specific purpose. He tells them that he will be a people, that he will make a nation out of him, and that this nation, it will have a specific location. And I love this story just as a brief aside, that he tells Abraham, hey, come with me, I'll show you where we're going. Leave your entire life, we're going here. And Abraham's where are we going? And he's don't worry about it, I'll tell you when we get there. But he has this vision that they would be his chosen people in a specific place and fulfill a God-given purpose to be a nation that would be blessed by God, and through this nation to bless the entire world, to begin restoring the world back to what it was always meant to be. And so he makes this promise to Abraham, and then it kind of starts. He has a son and then grows into a people, but then they go into slavery. And so we're the people, but we're not fulfilling the promise or in the place. But soon God raises up another man named Moses. He drives the people out of Egypt. He says, Pharaoh, let my people go. It's a great scene. You should watch the movie or read it. But either way, and he goes out. But then they begin to rebel against God once more. What was supposed to be a short journey into their God-given place, into the promised land, becomes a 40-year journey because the people rebel against God. And God says, you know what? We're going to wait this out. We'll have your kids enter the promised land. So for 40 years, they wander in circles, not getting to step into all that they were created to do and be. But finally, God is faithful, even though they were unfaithful, and their kids are allowed to enter the promised land. And so that is where we enter into as we jump into the book of Joshua today. They have been out on the far east, and then finally they're going to cross this clear geographic barrier that they've had for the past 40 years, the Jordan River, and begin stepping into all that God has for them. In our passage, Joshua 4, it says this: When all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, Take 12 men from the people, from each tribe of man, and command them, saying, Take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight. Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God, which this is the Ark of the Covenant, not the one with the fuzzy animals and the boat thing. He says, Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, What do those stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, when it passed over the Jordan. The waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. And the people of Israel did just as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel, just as the Lord told Joshua. And they carried them over with them to the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. And so to summarize that, they get to the edge of the Jordan, and they cross over, and God holds back the waters for miles, actually. If you look at the geographic areas that he gives, he pushes the waters way back, just as he had done when they crossed the Red Sea, showing them that, yes, I am the same God that brought you out of Egypt, and I was faithful then, I will be faithful now as you step into this new chapter. And so now they're stepping into this new chapter, but there's still a lot to be done, because there's this minor detail of the fact that people lived in the land that they were going to, and they would have to fight to conquer that land. It wasn't going to be easy. And so they had a lot to do ahead of them. You would think what they should be doing now is sharpening their swords, doing their stretches, getting ready for battle because they have stuff to do. But God calls them to do a rather peculiar thing. You see, as they step into this new chapter and as they're ready to step into all that they have been waiting for 40 years, God has them look back before they look forward. He has them go grab 12 stones symbolically representing each tribe of Israel and stack them up so that they can remember what God has already done. And while this may seem insignificant, I think there's a truth embedded in that could make a huge impact for you, that it could change not only your 2020, but your 2020's decade and your entire life if you latch on to this. This is truly the core of it. And I want us to lean in and really get this because this is so, so important. What he is showing them in this moment is that it's not what you do that defines you. In the long run, it's about what God has already done. In fact, nothing you do defines you. In the long run, it's what God has already done. You see, as they step into this and as they have so much to do, rather than look forward to do, they look back at done. And it's only in the context of understanding this that can I share with you the next point. Something that I believe with all of my being. I believe it to the very core of who I am. And that is this. I believe God has plans for you in 2020. I believe he has plans for your life beyond your wildest imagination to do things in and through you that you could never possibly conceive on your own. But I know that when I say that, some of you get excited and you say, yeah, let's do it. But for others of you, especially as you look back at going back to school, as your break is getting ready to end, when you hear that God has plans for you, it sounds like, great, what do I need? Another set of expectations. I have expectations for my parents to do this and that, for my coaches, for my teachers, from all these people in my life. The last thing I need, Austin, is for God to show up and place this expectation on me that he has big plans for me that I have to live up to. Austin, I just can't do that. I have enough on my plate already. And I think even for some of you that might say, I'm excited, I'll tackle whatever is ahead of me, somewhere deep inside, there might be a sense that maybe, just maybe, I'm one misstep away from people realizing that I don't have things as together as I'd like people to think. And that maybe, just maybe, this is all a little too much. And I get that. I've been in your seats. And in fact, I believe that this may be the hardest time to be a high school student. I know your parents will tell you that it was harder for them. They walked uphill both ways to school, fought off dinosaurs as they got there. But I really do believe that this is an incredibly difficult time to be a high school student, that there's never been more expectations put on you, never more things put on your plate, so many expectations and things to do, such a busy schedule, so many things to live up to. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to get ready for college, and you have to do this, and oh, you have to go to those extra practices. It is not easy, and I get that because I've been there. It was just a few years ago that I was in high school myself, and I remember what it's like to stack a schedule full of way too many AP classes so that maybe you can get into that college and work way too many hours so that you can afford that stuff and go to extra practices for sports. I remember, and on top of all of that, people asking you, what are you going to do with the rest of your life when, in fact, you've never done anything to know what you want to do with the rest of your life. I remember I literally gave myself stress ulcers trying to figure all this out during my junior year of high school, realizing that this is just too much, but having to make it seem like I had it all under control. And you would think, for some of you that know my story, after that, I applied to a lot of colleges and I got into some great programs, but I actually set that aside and came and worked at FCF. And you would think in that moment I had internalized the truth that it's not what I do that defines me in the long run, it's about what God has already done. And I wish that was the truth. But if I'm being honest, and we're going to be real this morning, because that's what we do here, I took that same baggage into ministry. That I have to work harder, jump higher, do better, be the best at this to be enough. That is what tells me that I'm okay, that I have to work harder, do better, be the best. And then maybe I'll be enough for others, I'll be enough for myself, maybe I'll be enough for God. And I'll tell you this, the best times I've had at Moody, the school I go to, haven't been the times when I've worked real hard and been up on stage and people have clapped for me and told me I'm great. It's not the times that I've turned in papers and gotten good grades. It's not the times, the high times. But truly, and I mean this with all of who I am, like I said, we're going to get real today. The best times I've had at Moody are 2 times I can think of very specifically, where I sat in my dorm, moved to tears, having gotten a glimpse of how good God is and what I feel he's calling me to do, and saying to God, I think you've got the wrong guy. I can't do this. This is too much. God, I see all these things you want me to do and all these things people have for me, and I just don't know I can do that. God, I see how good you are and you want me to communicate that to others. God, I think there's someone better for this job. But I remember in those moments specifically, just hearing that subtle sense, getting this reminder from God, Austin, I know you can't do it. That's the point. It's never been about what you do. You see, so many of us think we have to do things for God, for him to be pleased with us, for us to be enough for him. But the thing is, God's just fine on his own. Like, he's got this. Running the cosmos, that's his thing. He's good. He's not attracted to us. He doesn't love us because of what we can do for him. Truly, at the end of the day, there's really not much we can do for a God who is all-powerful. Being reminded of that sense, that's not what I do that defines me. It's what God has already done. And you see, if you can accept it, and I know it's not easy to wrap your head around this, but the defining moment of your life has already happened. The defining moment of your entire life has already happened. It happened 2,000 years ago when an itinerant Jewish rabbi hung on a cross in your place. And that was not just any rabbi, but that was God in the flesh, stepping into human existence before you had done anything for him, knowing that you would run away from him, stepping into your place and saying, I will die on their behalf. That is what defines us. That is the moment of your life that will change everything if you let it. Nothing that you could ever do, nothing you could ever do for God, no stage you could stand on, no people you could tell about his goodness will ever overshadow what he has already done for you. Nothing can overshadow that. And I know some of you, as we talk about, it's not about what you do, but what God has already done, might wonder, so what does this mean? Do we, you always talk about obeying God, do we still do that if it's not about what we do? And I'm telling you this, and it's a counterintuitive truth, but it is the way it works, I promise you. That recognizing what God has already done, rather than what you do as the center of your existence, is the very beginning of obedience. You see, this is what obedience looked like for the Israelites, and it's what it looks like for us. And it was just a few chapters earlier that they were giving these marching orders, and then this is how they carry it out. You see, just a few chapters earlier in Deuteronomy 30, their previous leader, Moses, who had led them out of Egypt, is giving them perhaps the greatest locker room speech of all time. He is getting ready to tell them all that they need to do to get ready for what's ahead of them, to fulfill their God-given purpose, to be a light to the nations, to live in their God-given place, being God's chosen people. He would not go with them, but he wants to give them his final parting advice before he passes away. And he tells them very clearly it's life or death. And this is what he says. This is Deuteronomy 30, verse 15. It says, "See, I've set before you today life and good, death and evil. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you today," and this is so important what he says next, "by loving the Lord your God, by walking in his ways and by keeping his commandments and his statutes and his rules, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. But if your hearts turn away and you will not hear, but are drawn away to worship other gods and serve them," and right there you might say, well, I wouldn't worship other gods. But truly, worship is simply putting something first in our life, putting it at the core of our heart, loving something most. What we love most is what we will worship. And if we're being honest, we do that with a lot of things. And he goes on, "I declare to you today that you shall surely perish." This is if you turn away. "You shall not live long in the land that you are going over the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, he tells them, that you and your offspring may live, loving the Lord your God, the root of obedience, obeying his voice and holding fast to him. For he is your life and length of your days, that you may dwell in the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them. We experience what I like to call the great reversal. That this is the root of obedience. And you see, the Apostle John, one of Jesus' closest followers and friends, as he reflects later on in his life about the love of God that he had experienced firsthand, he said these words that change everything. He said, we love because he, meaning God, first loved us. And I know perhaps in every other area of your life, every other relationship of your life, you experience the opposite. We do this so that they will. We do this so that they will respond this way. I do this, I study hard so that my parents will be proud. I work hard on sports so that my coach will be proud. I do this so that my friends will see me this way. I do this, I behave this way so that people will think I'm cool. I do this so that people will think I'm enough. I do this so that maybe I'll think I'm enough. But with God, the great reversal is that he loved us first before we had done anything for him. The Apostle Paul goes on to tell us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. The story of the entire Bible, the narrative arc of Scripture, is one in which we run away from God and he runs towards us. When we say, God, thanks, but no thanks, and he says, let me enter in. When we say, God, I don't need you, and he says, but I'm still going to enter in. We say, God, I don't even want you in my life, and he says, I want nothing more than to have you in mine. You see, as we crucified God in the flesh, as Jesus hung on the cross in excruciating pain, being mocked, spit on, and cursed, and just as we do today to him when we say we don't need you, he turned and looked at the people in the crowd and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I believe he speaks that over you today, saying it's not what you do that defines you, but what he has already done. And we can run from him all of our lives, and he still runs towards us because he loved us first. He always takes the first step. Always takes that first step. And this is something that we have to internalize, that we have to realize. That we don't have to live up to God's standards. It's not that we do this so that he will love us. It's not that we obey him so that he will love us. But because he loves us, we love him. And that is the root of obedience. That is our defining moment when he hung on that cross for us. And as the Israelites looked at stones that they stacked up when God was faithful to bring them out of the wilderness, we cling to the cross. We cling to the cross, remembering that that is the moment that defines us, when the Savior of the world, the God who created you, who created the cosmos and holds it all together, stepped into human flesh to die for you while you ran from him. That's the gospel. That's the story of Jesus. And that is what we cling to. We remember what God has done, and we recognize that that is what defines us, not what we do. See, he calls us his child. Does that promise you? The absolute greatest title you will ever hold. It will not be scholarship recipient. It won't be first team all-state. It won't be mother, father, CEO, business owner. It will be the title you did nothing for and means everything. That is child of God. You are a child of the creator of this world, who sees you in your worst moment, calls you beloved, calls you his child, who he will never give up on, who he crossed heaven and earth to die for, that maybe, just maybe, you would one day return into the warm embrace of your heavenly Father, who simply says, come home, my child, come home. As we wrap up, just want to give you some really practical tips for what this might look like in your life. And the first is one that I got from a professor who I love dearly at Moody. And he preaches this anytime he has the opportunity. And I want to share this with you this morning. That is this very practical tip of preach the gospel to yourself daily. We never move past a need for the grace of God, for a reminder that is not because of what we do that makes us worthy to God, but because of what he's already done. That while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And I know some of you might have a habit of maybe you pray at meals or whatever. I want you to try to insert this into your life somewhere, whether it's before a meal, brushing your teeth. I really don't care when you do it, but at some point in your day, just take that quick reminder that it's not what I do that defines me. It's what God has already done. You preach the gospel to yourself, remembering that it is finished, is what Christ said on the cross. And it's not about what you do. God's got this, and he still wants you. God is fully complete in himself and desires a relationship with you. We remind ourselves of that daily. We remind ourselves, second, of done before do. Done before do. Just as they looked back before looking forward, we remind ourselves that God's faithfulness in the past is a positive indicator for his faithfulness in the future. That faithfulness of God yesterday builds our faith for tomorrow. And lastly, you guys remember that advertisement I talked about at the beginning of today's message? That be your own hero. Be your own hero. It has a nice ring to it. But it is utter foolishness. Utter garbage advice for your life. You see, because just as Moses said, choose life or choose death, we are given those same options in our life. We can choose to define ourselves by what others say about us. We can choose to live our life running on the hamster wheel of trying to get our affirmation from others. We can choose to live our life wondering, what do they think about me? What do they say about me? How do they feel about me? Maybe if I do this, they'll think this. Maybe if I say this or do that or work harder or be more or do more, then maybe they'll think I'm enough, and maybe, just maybe, I won't. Or we can choose to define ourselves by what God has already done. And recognize that the greatest title you ever hold is child of God. That he loves you dearly. Not for anything you do, anything you've done, but simply for being you. See, you can choose to be the hero of your own story. Go for it. And in light of eternity, it's probably a story that will die with you and be forgotten. Never promised this would be inspiration. Or you can choose to be an extra in God's story. The lead role has long since been taken, and trust me, you don't want to be at the center of that story. It costs more than we could ever imagine, and there is someone infinitely better to fulfill that, and that is Jesus, who loves you as you are, who has already defined your life if you choose to accept it. But I promise you, being an extra in God's story, the story of the redemption of humanity and the redemption of the entire world, bringing heaven on earth one person at a time, is the greatest story you could ever be a part of. Choose that. Choose to be an extra in God's story rather than the hero of your own story, because I promise you that it is the best role you will ever play. If you guys are okay with it, I'm going to give you, if you thought that was bad, the least inspiring end to a message you've ever gotten. But I think we all need to hear it. And it's that soon after this moment, they do cross into the promised land, and they do take the land. They are God's people in that given place. But fulfilling their God-given purpose is something they truly never achieve. They fail. They fail their purpose. Here's the inspiration for all of us this morning. Each of us in 2020, we too will fall short. We will fail living up to all that we were created to be and do. But yet, as the Apostle Paul wrote, even when we are unfaithful, as he wrote to his protege Timothy, in the book of 2 Timothy, he says that even when we are unfaithful, still yet God is faithful. God is faithful even when we are unfaithful. And I want you to internalize that, because it's going to be tempting in 2020 that when we slip up to define ourselves by what we've done rather than what God has done on our behalf.
It's going to be tempting that when you mess up, you're going to feel that you've let God down, that somehow he's disappointed. In our inherent reaction to when that happens, that we run away from God, that we hide from God. But what he's inviting us by the fact that he defines us by what he's done, not what we do, is that when we mess up, that we can come back into the warm embrace of our Heavenly Father who says, it's never been about what you do. That has never been your defining moment. It's not about that. It's about what I've already done for you. So in 2020, when you hit those low moments, those moments you wish no one knew about, those moments that you wish you could block out, those moments that you're not proud of, in those moments, rather than running from God, we cling to the cross. We remember that even in those moments, and perhaps especially in those moments, he sees you and calls you his child whom he loves dearly. He defines you not by what you've done, but by what he's already done on your behalf. I pray that 2020 could be your best year yet. But it's not going to be your best year by trying to show others how great you are, by trying to convince everyone else that it's been your best year, by trying to do more and be better and live up to some standard of others. But I promise you, 2020 is the year you begin defining yourself by what God says about you. You look back before looking forward. It could truly be your best year yet. I believe you cannot even imagine what God can do through you this year, this coming decade, and with the rest of your life, if you choose to live that kind of life. Let's pray.